Welcome, everyone. Lovely to see you here tonight, especially with the nice warm weather. If you have trouble hearing me, raise your hand and I'll talk louder. This evening, you're going to be meeting Catherine Beatrice Fernald, who is portrayed by Shelley Leddy. But first, let me tell you a little about Shelley and her husband, Mike. They retired in 2014 and followed their oldest son to Temecula. They moved here from Manhattan Beach. Mike was a contractor, and Shelley was employed at Kaiser Permanente as the training leader of 4,000 receptionists in Southern California. While exploring for their new home in Temecula, they discovered the Historical Society. They joined on the spot because they wanted to meet people here in the Temecula. And they are so glad that they did. Life here includes one son in Redondo Beach who is about to get married, and one son and daughter-in-law in Temecula, and 2 granddaughters, along with many friends and in the South Bay area and in Temecula Valley. Several of us from the Historical Society met with 2 members of the Fernald family. One of the first things we learned about Catherine is that she preferred to be called Trixie. We met Leah Fernald, who was married to one of Trixie's grandsons, and we also met Leah's granddaughter, Melissa Hoyt. They were very generous in sharing their family history with us. Rebecca Feinbach recently met another Fernald family member, Scott Fernald, who lives here in Temecula. Shelley hopes to find the connection between Scott Fernald and Trixie Fernald. So Scott and his wife Shelley and their daughter Bryland are here. Will you stand, please? Yay! So just to mention, next week we'll meet Jean Bethel, who's the secretary to Earl Stanley Gardner, and lived here many years while he was doing the Perry Mason series. So that's very, very interesting. So now please welcome Trixie Fernald.
Can I say a couple words? Go ahead. Here we go. I don't even think I need this. No, not up that high. Yeah. I just wanted to say last week. I just wanted to say last week that we started a sign-up sheet. We're going to go on Wednesday, August the 11th, to the Paris train depot. We're going to meet at the across the street in the parking lot from the Red Barn at 8:15, leaving at 8:30. We'll be there by 9 o'clock. And you're going to learn about that old house up on the hill there, the old rock castle. The lady, Mrs. Keys, is going to tell us all about the history that was built in 1929. Also, lunch will be served. Restaurant, it's about a block away. So after the tour, we're going to go down about a block and go to this restaurant called La Carve. Also, if anybody has decided if they want to go, I have the sign-up sheet here. Also, make sure you get the directions on how to get there, because your phone and your computer will not take you there. You'll totally get lost. So make sure. It's not your fault. This place is hard to find. And so it's been there since 1892. So yes.
Has it been hard to find all that time?
Because the year I was born. And you got to go through the old bank building there. It was built in 1894, and also a hotel there from 1894. We can't go in that because there's office space there. Mike Niger is his son has an office there, or his grandson, so we can't tour the hotel. It's still businesses. But anyway, so if you haven't signed up, see me after the speaking tonight. Also, see me about getting directions, okay? All right. Shelley?
Just turn this off. Yeah, that's fine. I'll make sure your volume is.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lynn, for a nice introduction. I am Catherine Beatrice Fernald, and I would like to thank you all for coming out tonight to hear a little bit of my story. Although they couldn't be here tonight, my granddaughter-in-law, Leah Fernald, and my great-granddaughter, as Lynn said, Melissa Hoyt, live in Torrance, California. Leah married one of my grandsons, Lauren, and he was the son of one of my sons, Charles Robert. I love when Leah and I and Melissa reminisce about my life. Family is one of nature's masterpieces, and mine is so important to me. As Lynn said also, we recently found another Fernald family member here in Temecula. His name is Scott, and although we don't know the exact connection, I'm hoping that we will be able to do some ancestry research and figure out how we're connected. Well, I was born Catherine Beatrice Van Nest in Great Bend, Kansas on December 26, 1878. But very quickly I became Trixie, and Trixie I remained for the rest of my life. It accurately reflected my lively and modern personality better than Catherine Beatrice. When I was born, my mother, Eliza Ellen Rathburn, was 22, and my father, Cornelius Andrew Van Nest, was 23. My parents moved me and my sister, Polly, from Great Bend, Kansas to Temecula. My future husband's parents, Charles and Sarah Fernald, and their children moved to Temecula from Maine. I met my sweetheart, their son Eugene Fernald, in Temecula, but sadly he died before we could get married. But not letting the grass grow under my feet, I was lucky enough to have been able to marry his brother, Frank Loren Fernald, instead. I was definitely ready for marriage, a husband, and a family at 17. Frank was more than ready at a mature age of 35, and we married in Temecula in 1896. Frank was very smart, clever, handy, and creative. We made a very good team. Whatever either one of us wanted to do, it was okay, we just did it. He was a good husband and father, since he could turn his hand or mind to just about anything. Our life was never dull, and I was not one bit behind him in energy, imagination, or ability either. So we were very well matched. I might say we made a handsome couple too. Ready and mature is a good combination, and by 1904 I had given birth to 5 children. Although we were grieved by the death of our first baby, he died on the day he was born, but he was rapidly followed by Frank Cornelius, named after my husband and my father. We called him Neil. Lauren Van Nest followed, and then Maud Ellen, who we called Dolly, and then Charles Robert, who we called Bert. As you can tell, we were a family known for nicknames. These were busy and happy times for our family, and we contributed not only to the population of Temecula, but to its enrichment as well. We had several business ventures created as the local need arose. Frank had a quarry specializing in blue granite. He also became expert in the modern art of turn-of-the-century photography. He had an innate ability to figure out modern inventions and then the foresight to know what would sell. He was so creative. He even painted backdrops for photo sessions in our studio. We set them up at the back of our photo studio to include in all our portrait photos. However, since photography could hardly support a family, I more or less took over that aspect of our business along with running the home. Frank focused more on the personal transportation business. This included selling, fixing, and providing gas for automobiles, as well as selling and maintaining bicycles. Frank owned one of the earliest garages and service stations in Temecula. Our garage was even mentioned in the Lake Elsinore Valley Press as early as 1910. The business expanded into general mercantile products as well as guns and ammunition, which led to the infamous gun incident of December 24th, 1907. Frank sold a gun to Horace McGee, and Horace went right out and murdered Louis S. Collier and Constable Preston von Swangen in the street near the Temecula Inn. This became a huge sensation in our small town of Temecula. The trial was held in Riverside and attracted most of the citizens of Temecula. Of course, Frank was called to testify. He told the court that he didn't know that Horace was under the influence of alcohol when he had purchased a gun. If he had known that, he wouldn't have sold him the gun. Another witness who had been in Frank's store testified that he knew that Horace had been drinking, but that he did not appear drunk. He said that Horace counted the cartridges in the gun and remarked that 3 were gone and seemed rational. The notoriety of the incident did not hurt any of our businesses in the least. As word spread, people came to meet us. It even gave Frank the opportunity to provide at least 2 engraved headstones. Oh, and did I forget to mention that Frank's family were stonemasons specializing in gravestones? Frank did wonderful drawings, which came in handy for our advertising flyers as well as for gravestone etchings. His artistic talents ran in all directions, including photographic composition, and he even made his own tools. I loved the photography business because it gave me the opportunity to ride a bicycle all over the countryside looking for scenery and subjects to photograph. Back then, it was a challenge to cope with all the equipment needed for such an endeavor, and later on, I dashed about in a motorized cycle called a motorcycle. And I never minded one bit how many eyebrows were raised. A woman riding bicycles and motorcycles? Oh my. Our children were around and involved in all our business activities, running between our home, stores, and garage. They became not only educated in the 3 R's when they went to school, but more broadly in life skills around our business endeavors. They learned the mechanics of automobiles and bicycles in the garage, the basic of photography in the studio, and merchandising in the store. They also learned the need to work hard to succeed at anything. It was 6 years before we had more children. First Edmund or Eddie in 1911, and then our lively little Molly in 1913. Cameras of the 1910s were mainly of wooden folding construction. Nickel-plated parts were more important than lacquered brass, with roll film and red or maroon bellows. Our granddaughter-in-law, Leah, has my original camera at her house, and she's taking very good care of it for me. These were busy and fairly prosperous times for our family. We had gas tanks installed underground, which was much more convenient for our customers and for us too. And I espoused Christian Science principles, the teachings of which I found appealing for their emphasis on a healthy and natural lifestyle, as well as a modern approach to religion. I was not the kind of woman to be constrained by any stuffy traditions that didn't approve of the freedoms of an active modern woman to pursue her own course in life. The philosophies of Mary Eddy Baker were a good fit for me. We were generally a well-respected and well-established family when on June 1st, 1917, Frank fell ill with appendicitis. After being rushed to the hospital all the way in Riverside, and even after surgery that night, he slowly declined and he died on June 15th, 1915, at the age of 56. This was a traumatic set of circumstances and a devastating blow to our entire family. But it fell on me to pick up the pieces and carry on. This left little time for grieving. Our older boys were not quite mature enough to run the garage by themselves, and little lively Molly was only 4 years old. The entire responsibility of our businesses and family fell into my lap, but I was determined not to give up. I found a mechanic named Walter Chapin to come and work at our Temecula garage with me as proprietor. I'm not sure that his ego could handle having such a strong-minded female boss. Remember that women were considered by constitution and temperament unfit to vote until 3 years later. At any rate, he felt the call to arms and left to serve in World War I. This left me someone in the lurch because mechanics were scarcer than hen's teeth at that time in history. Well, eventually I persuaded a reluctant Mr. Archie D. Nichols of Newport Beach to come and work for me on a temporary basis. Mrs. Nichols did not approve of this arrangement. Not one bit she didn't. And by Christmas, she left California to visit her parents in Chicago, and she never returned. I don't think our son Neil was too enthused about Mr. Nichols working for me either. He left to attend college in Los Angeles. He returned to check on things and visit over Christmas, and my mother came to visit me and my sister from Inglewood, ostensibly to celebrate my birthday on December 26th. My sister had married Ormiston Gonzalez, and his relatives still live in Temecula. My sister and Ormy had a beautiful working ranch, a beautiful ranch house, and cattle in Temecula. After Frank's death, I made more improvements to the garage by building a cement foundation over the gas tanks. However, after Frank died, the cooperative nature of our relationship with regard to our business endeavors also died with him. The effort of trying to carry the entire load of mothering and sole proprietorship of several businesses became overwhelming without family support. So in contemplating my alternatives, I made several visits to Inglewood to explore the possibility of moving my family there and renting out the garage. Also, my relationship with Mr. A.D. Nichols, or Red, as he was called because of his red hair, had become a little warmer and was a source of gossip in such a small community like Temecula, and that did affect our businesses. The temporary arrangement we initially agreed on was beginning to wear thin. Mr. Nichols made a trip to Los Angeles on business, which I hoped had something to do with certain considerations for our future. In May 1918, things came to either a head or fruition, whichever way you want to look at it. And Mr. Nichols and I went to Inglewood to finalize arrangements to move there and to plan a quiet family wedding. We rented the garage in Temecula and moved to Inglewood by August 1918. We finally married in 1924. This proved to be a kind of semi-retirement for me. Archie was a good man and a loving father to Frank's children. He felt particularly close to Molly Beatrice because she was so young when he came into the picture. He even laid his claim to her by changing her name to Vivian Teresa Nichols. Thereafter, she became known as V, and her personality was so similar to mine that I have to admit that she and I clashed at times. Red didn't have the entrepreneurial energy that Frank and I had, so I settled into a more of a homemaking role, running the home and caring for my mother as she aged, but without ever losing my spirit of adventure and certainly encouraging it in all my children. There was always some new venture or other hatched along with the eggs in Inglewood. Red and Lauren worked as mechanics at the Albertson Motor Company in Inglewood. And ever at the forefront of inventions, my boys built me a small biplane, and I once more caused a stir by flying around in my own airplane. That was suddenly ended when I landed at an airfield in Riverside and my plane was confiscated for being considered unsafe. I continued to pursue photography, but more as a hobby, and as time went on, I got to enjoy my grandchildren as they entered the picture. As I sense that I am moving towards the pearly gates, I will certainly not complain that my life was dull. I had enjoyed a fairly liberal and well-to-do upbringing before indulging my zest for adventure and new experiences by traveling west to help pioneer the frontier. This pioneering atmosphere had given me the freedom to pursue activities not always common in the fairer sex at that time in history. I married a man with similar energy and pioneering spirit who possessed the intelligence of a savvy businessman and the talent of an artist. We worked well together as a team, both in the bedroom and in business. We watched both our personalities spread among our intelligent and interesting offspring to one degree or another. I had to overcome the loss of 2 sweethearts before the age of 38 and get myself out of those tragic circumstances into the arms of another man without wasting much time. I guess as independent as I was, marriage actually gave me more freedom to indulge my need for adventure. That was how it was in those days. I was a handsome woman, too, a woman a man could be proud of, and it didn't hurt that I came with means, either. Frank's unexpected death when we were at full tilt in the middle of our busy and entrepreneurial life took much more out of me than I realized at the time. Having to pick up all those pieces and carry on with 5 children wore me down, and I began to be attracted to a more peaceful and settled way of living. I easily fell into the benefits of living among my family in Inglewood, with a good husband who went to work for someone else for a living. I was still modern and adventurous and excited about new projects, but I was happier to support my children and grandchildren in their dreams than energetically pursuing my own. It seems as if my life was in 3 phases: being raised in Kansas, pioneering marriage, having children while being at the cutting edge of a new century with bicycles, automobiles, and photography in the burgeoning town of Temecula, and then the last 20 years were spent back among the extended family in Inglewood, in a more peaceful rural atmosphere. No complaints. I'm ready and happy for the next adventure, and when my time comes, I will still sign in as Trixie. Thank you.
You were 38 when you moved to Inglewood?
Yeah, about, maybe a little older, because Frank died in, 1917, and I moved in 1918.
How many years older was he?
He was 35 when I was 17, so 18 years. Any other questions? Thank you.